Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'm studying to be an elementary school teacher. I created this video to share the stories of underrepresented scientists from the last 200 years. So, here we go. Here are 8 diverse scientists to teach your students and yourselves about. Before I start the video, I wanted to talk about why I chose this topic, and why it's important to teach kids about diversity. First, to inspire. The scientists in this video show an amazing ability to overcome obstacles to accomplish their goals, even when the obstacles were unfair and unjust. I was super inspired by them, and I'm not a member of a minority group or a scientist, which leads me to the next reason, which is to represent. If you Google search the word scientist, most of the people that come up are from pretty similar demographics. Many people don't think of the people in this video when they think of a scientist, and that needs to change. Students of all backgrounds and demographics should be able to see themselves represented in all fields, including science. So let's get into it. The first person I'll be talking to you about is George Washington Carver, who is not the George Washington that you're probably thinking of. George was born a slave but escaped from it, and as a child developed a passion for cooking. He attended university, although the first school he went to revoked their acceptance when they found out that he was black. At the 2 subsequent schools he attended, he was the first black student at both. As an adult, he introduced other former slaves who were now farmers into crop rotation, alternating growing their cotton with growing peanuts. This improved the soil quality for the cotton a lot, but also left the farmers with many peanuts that they didn't really have a purpose for. So George went on to create many different forms of peanut products, including a new form of peanut butter. He also traveled to India to meet with Gandhi to discuss how less wealthy countries can eat more nutritious diets. Next is Susan LaFlesche, an indigenous woman from the United States. When Susan was a child, she stayed by the bedside of a woman in her community while she was sick. They waited and waited for a doctor to come, but they never did. Susan probably felt the need to address this issue and became one of the first indigenous women to earn a medical degree. She also graduated at the top of her class and was valedictorian. When she started working as a doctor, she established such a connection with her patients that she also became some of their accountants and lawyers. The other doctors were intimidated by the connection Susan had within the community and quit, leaving her to travel long distances, often by foot and in the snow, to serve all her patients. Before her death, she fulfilled her dream, which was opening a hospital on her reservation. This hospital was the first privately funded hospital on a reservation in America. Our next scientist is Alan L. Hart. When Alan was a child, his father passed away of typhoid fever, which inspired him to pursue the medical field. Alan was assigned female at birth, but decided to transition while in medical school. Alan graduated with his male name and at the top of his class. After medical school, he was set to start his own practice in a town where he was outed as being transgender, and this forced him to relocate. This happened multiple times throughout his life, as he constantly moved from place to place. Eventually, he began being able to take synthetic hormones, which made him more comfortable to present as male. He did a lot of research about X-rays, including most noticeably using them to detect tuberculosis earlier than was ever previously possible. As word of his discoveries traveled across the country, he is cited as having saved many lives from detecting and treating tuberculosis earlier than ever before. Let's talk about Youyou. Tu was born in China and contracted tuberculosis in her youth, which inspired her to pursue medicine. She traveled to rainforests in southern China to witness effects of malaria firsthand, and developed a treatment for it using traditional Chinese medicine. She tested the treatment on herself, and it worked, but it was a less common form of treatment since it was based in Chinese traditions. After 2 decades, the World Health Organization finally recommended the treatment as the first line of defense against malaria. She was awarded a Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2015 and was the first Chinese scientist to receive a Nobel Prize. Throughout all of this, she remained incredibly humble, citing her teammates and scientists before her as equally deserving of the award. Wangari Maathai is our next scientist, who was born in Kenya in 1940. Wangari was the first woman to become a professor and chair in her region in veterinary sciences. Her most notable work is in the establishment of the Greenbelt movement, which got women to plant over 20 million trees in 40 different countries in Africa. This work earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 2004, which she was the first female African recipient of. She was also elected into government as Assistant Minister for the Environment in Kenya with an overwhelming 98% of the vote. Next is Temple Grandin. Temple was nonverbal until the age of 3.5 and also diagnosed with autism as a child. Temple got her PhD and teaches as a professor for animal science. Her most notable work has been done with cows, where she has used her own experiences with anxiety to develop a squeeze machine to kill cattle more humanely and with less stress being put on the animal. A different version of the same machine is also used by adults and children with autism to calm themselves. In addition to all of her science work, she also wrote books and advocates for autistic people and the strengths that they bring. Alexa Canady is our next scientist, who is the first Black woman in the United States to become a neurosurgeon. She was also one of only 22 female neurosurgeons at the time. Alexa was passionate about ensuring children get access to the same medical care regardless of their means. She worked most of her career in Detroit, where almost half of the children lived below the poverty line at the time. She was named Chief of Pediatric Neurosurgery and then moved to Florida to retire, or so she thought. In Florida, she stopped being retired when she realized children in her area had to travel over 400 miles to get care. As she worked for these kids, she found others to follow in her footsteps, so she felt she was able to retire for the second time. Our final scientist is Sally Ride, who is the first American woman in space and the youngest person in space at age 32. Prior to her first voyage in space, she had to endure interview questions like, would she wear makeup, and would she cry? During her first mission, she was a part of a team that deployed and received a satellite. She was also the only person to sit on both panels for the Challenger explosion and Columbia crash. In addition to her work for NASA, she also wrote 6 books for children and created a company called Sally Ride Science that has a program for teachers to get students excited about science. She kept her personal life fairly private, but it was revealed after her death that she was in a loving relationship with a woman for 27 years, making her a part of the LGBTQ community as well. Before the end of this video, I wanted to address some limits that this list has and ways it could have been more diverse. To start, the fact that I was doing my research only in English would have limited the people I found, especially those from outside of English-speaking countries. Some factors that contributed to me being impressed by someone and including them in the video were things like having awards and degrees, but these are very colonized standards of success, and the people giving these awards and degrees may not have the interests of minority groups in mind. Even the concept of giving individual people recognition, which is the whole point of my video, is a more westernized concept as opposed to other non-European or colonized countries that have a more collectivist and community approach. I chose to focus on the last 200 years because I felt going further in the past may give an unfair advantage to Western scientists, as these may be the stories that are more likely to be able to be passed on and more commonly known. Even if there are limitations in the people I chose to focus on in this video, and the group that I chose was not as inclusive or representative of the world's scientists as it could have been, their stories are still important, and so is the general idea of teaching students about a diverse group of scientists. This video is just meant to be a starting point to ensure that as many perspectives as possible are included in your lessons, and to start thinking about whose voices might have been missing in the past. I was educating myself on all of these people and more that I learned about along the way as an adult, but if educators get on board, we can change that. These people won't be the result of Google searches for underrepresented scientists or scientists from minority groups, but rather just of the term scientists. Who our students think of as scientists is largely up to us, and by including diverse populations in our teaching, they will see that not only can all of these people be scientists, but they can too.